Hello you two, and welcome to your first lesson of this half-term's geography learning. So let's make a start. Now today we're going to be looking at this question: what is a settlement? But before we begin our new learning for this half-term, we need to have a bit of a think back to what we looked at in Spring 1 and complete our knowing more, remembering more questions today. So you will need a pen, pencil and a piece of paper, or you can discuss these answers with an adult or just call them out if you don't have anyone with you in your room at the moment. So question number 1 says, the coast is where the land meets the sea. I'll read that again. The coast is where the land meets the sea. Is that true or is that false? Question 2. Which of these countries is landlocked, which means they do not have a coast? Tick one box or circle around it, or write the name of the place down. And the challenge is name 3 different types of coastline. Name 3 different types of coastline. You can pause the video now if you wish, or you may have called out the answers as you went along. So I'll just give you a moment. Okay, welcome back, year 2. So the first question, the coast is where the land meets the sea. That is true. Okay, so the coast is where the land meets the sea. Question 2, which of these countries is landlocked, which means they do not have a coast? It does not have a coast. Well, we know Wales is in the United Kingdom and France is in Europe, and both of those 2 countries are, well, part of it, are by the coast, by the sea. So that would mean that the only other alternative is Mongolia. And we did look at that in one of our lessons. It is a landlocked country, which means it's surrounded by other land and doesn't have any coast at all. Question 3, the challenge question, name 3 different types of coastline. So we had cliffs, stacks and mudflats. So let's get on to our learning today and our objective. So what is a settlement? So by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to name the different types of settlements, and you can identify some key physical and human features that are characteristic, which means they're like typical of each of those settlements. So this is our knowledge organizer, which will usually be in your books. Obviously, when we hopefully come back to school, you'll be seeing this as well. Now, you've got vocabulary here. So the main section of this knowledge organizer that we're going to look at today are the following. You've got the bit that's surrounded in red, a red box just over here, and you've got these 4 words: settlement, village, town, and city, with a definition of each and an image to help you if you're not sure. Words that we already know. So, for example, we have the word town, village and city. You actually have covered this already in some of your year 1 learning, if you can think all the way back. But words that you're going to meet in today's lesson, we'll do my turn, your turn again. So the first one, settlement. Next one, aerial photograph. Next one, human feature. Next one, physical feature. And the last one, service. So, obviously you won't be able to turn to your partner, but if you've got an adult there, or if not, you can just pause the video and think about this question. What is a settlement? You can use the picture to give you a bit of a clue. What is a settlement? So, settlements are places where people live. They can vary in size, they can be different sizes, but they often share a range of different features. So in front of you, there are different types of settlements that you can see in the pictures. Have a think, do you recognise or can you name any of those settlements that are shown in those images? When the very first one should be one that's very familiar, or a scene that we can sort of identify quite quickly because we live in one of those. It's a city. Next one is a town. And the final one is a village. And you can see there are distinct differences between each of them. So one of our vocabulary for today was the term aerial photographs. Now, on your screen, you can see this is an example of an aerial photograph. What do you think an aerial photograph is? So an aerial photograph is a photograph or a picture taken from above, and it's usually in some sort of aircraft like a plane or a helicopter, and it looks down upon a particular settlement. So thinking about that, what settlements do these aerial photographs show? And I want you to think about the 3 settlement types that we've already looked at. Which is the smallest and which is the biggest? Okay, which is the smallest and which is the biggest? So the smallest one is the village because it has the least amount of houses, and you can see much of the village is surrounded by fields and grasslands. And in this example, you can also see some sort of canal or river going along. The next one is a town, okay? So you can see it's a lot bigger than the village, which we see in the first one. Okay, and then there are some elements of fields and grassland around, but not as much as what you can see in the village, which means hopefully you identified this one as the city. It's a lot more built up. It is the biggest settlement, and there's a lot more houses and buildings and roads than in the if you compare it to the village as well. So what I would like you to do is think about this question. You can pause your video and think about what your answers might be. What do you think people may need to be able to survive in a settlement? That could be a village, a town, or a city. What do people might need to be able to survive in a settlement? They need things like food, water, land to be able to build shelter, and think about how these link back to our science learning about needs and wants. Some of these things, though, may be available in the area, things like access to fuel, but often they need to be transported. So particularly fuel for any kind of vehicles or transport that they need, that would have to be brought in from somewhere else. So just to remind ourselves about the difference between human features and physical features. So when we talk about physical features, they're naturally occurring features that shape the landscape. So they're things that occur through nature. And we all know, and that's the one we always seem to remember in year 2, human features in particular are features that are created by human beings, human actions, and their ideas. So we're going to have a look at, and we're going to have to decide if some of these features are physical features or human features. So we've got church, field, house, tower block, river, mountain, road, shops, valley, bridges, and trees. So if we look at some of these things, we need to sort these into whether we think they are physical features, so things that occur naturally in nature or naturally occurring features that shape the landscape, or whether these are human features, things that have been created by human actions and ideas. Pause the video and see if you can sort them into the correct column. Okay, so welcome back. We're going to go through some of the physical and human features. So a church is a human feature because it's been built by humans. They have built the church, which makes it a human feature. Then you've got field, which is a physical feature, A house, which is human. Tower block, which is human. River, physical. Mountain, physical. A road has been created by people. Shops, again, created by people. A valley is a naturally occurring feature. Bridges have been created by people. Trees. Hospitals, super. Now, if we move on to have a look at these two pictures just here. Now, when we think about a city, okay, which are two examples of these images in front of you, you can notice some key elements to them. Now, a city can only be classed as a city if it has a cathedral in it. So cathedral is slightly different from a church. It's a lot bigger. So most cities, or all cities generally, have cathedrals in them. And that's how you know the difference between, a lot of the time, between a city and a town. You'll also notice that often cities have a lot more wider kind of road structures and a lot bigger and high-rise buildings. If you particularly think about the London landscape, you'll notice in central London in particular, you've got buildings like the Shard, Big Ben, the Gherkin. They're all predominantly large buildings which you can see from quite a distance, okay? And that's how you start to recognise and see some of the different features between a city and a town. So again, if we think about some of the differences between a town then and a village, okay, a town is smaller than a city, but it is significantly bigger than a village. Village tends to have a few houses that can be spread out over a kind of quite a distance in some examples, whereas towns are generally more clumped together. Buildings are more kind of homes are more clumped together, and you have kind of more shops and things like that. Whereas if you lived in a village, a lot of the time you might only have one or two shops, and if you want to go for a bigger shop, for example, you'd have to go drive into your local town. So your task today is to look at some statements about villages, towns or cities and match them to the correct settlement. Okay, so you're going to have a different piece of paper for your task. I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint and get the task for you for today that you are going to be completing, which looks like this. So you've got a statement. So the first one says, usually surrounded by countryside. Now you need to decide and identify if that statement is a feature of a village, a town, or a city. So there are some clues, some pictures to help you underneath to remind you about some of the differences between them. So if we think about that one, and we can do this together, the statement says again, usually surrounded by countryside. Is that a village, a town, or a city? Call it out. Well done, those of you who said a village. So we know that a village generally is surrounded by a lot of green countryside, okay, and green fields. So that is a statement that applies to a village. Then you would move on to the next one. If you need an adult to read it out to you, that's absolutely fine. You can do that. So I'm going to take us now back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so you will see that all of the statements that are in the table that I've just shown you are here. So again, you're going to be sorting them into village, town, or a city. So before we leave and finish, and you can go and get on with your work today, I want you to think about these questions and test your knowledge to see if you can answer some of these correctly, and maybe you can share them with a grown-up. So question 1 says, what is the largest settlement that we have looked at? Question 2, what religious building might this settlement have? Question 3, What type of landscape usually surrounds a village? And question 4, what is a shop an example of? Okay, well done, year 2. So good luck with your task today. And as we say every week, if there is any questions that you have or any queries, you can come back to us this afternoon and have that conversation at the end of the class novel session with one of your teachers. Good luck.